In this week's episode, we've got filthy engine bays, we've got a disgusting collection of bottle caps and other junk under the rear seat, and we've got an empire of filth to remove from the carpets and the seats after years of neglect and abuse. So let's tackle the engine bay first on this one. We're going to need to cover up a few things which are electrical. Now first of all, we're going to be doing the alternator, then the HT leads and also the coil pack. Beside that's the ECU for the car, the fuse box, and then behind right at the back we've got an ABS module as well. So all I'm going to do here is cover these electrical components with some old dirty microfibers and a towel, just to stop too much water getting around that area. Once they're all wrapped up, we can start looking to put some all-purpose cleaner onto the areas we're going to need to scrub quite thoroughly. This is Koshchemi Green Star at about 10:1 for a rather large IK pump sprayer, mainly because I use quite a lot of it. And then we're going to agitate, as we can see here, with a work stuff brush. They're really good, they're affordable, they're quite hard wearing. It's just a case of getting this area good old thorough clean. Periodically rinse the brush in some warm water just to make sure it doesn't get too clogged. And yes, I finally upgraded to a stubby gun conversion. I've only had it about a week. I can say it's a lot easier to use, especially with the quick release coupling on the end to go from your jet nozzle down to the snow foam cannon and back. Definitely a worthwhile upgrade. So with that area washed off, what I'm going to do now is remove all the microfibers and towels. The top of the rocker cover on the engine was pretty disgusting, as we can see, so I've sort of manually done this by hand, given it a wipe over, and then what we're going to do is we're going to introduce an airline into the engine bay. The great thing about the airline is it's going to help clean and push out any debris from around that rocker cover area, and also enable me to dry the engine bay a little bit more before we put a dressing in there. Now the dressing we're going to be using is Koshchemi Motor Plus, which is very good. You can apply either wet, like we're about to, or semi-wet, or onto a dry engine bay. It's very similar to Autoglim's Super Sheen. Same, you can do the same with that product. You can quite literally wash the engine bay, put it over the top of the water, and then as it naturally evaporates, it just leaves a nice sort of factory-looking OE finish. It's not too sort of shiny or slimy. It's just quite a natural-looking finish at the end. A great thing about the Motor Plus is it's got this sort of slight blue tinge to it, so when you're spraying it on, you can see where you've applied it. As you can see, I'm quite generous with that. The same can be said for the Autoglim Super Sheen as well. That's got, obviously, it's like a yellow looking product, so when you spray it on initially, it's sort of almost like a guide coat. You can see where you have applied it and where you haven't. With the engine complete, we can look to doing this disgusting fill area. Now this has one of these new style filler necks that doesn't have a cap, and as you can see if I put my finger in there, it's just sprung loaded. Now the problem is if we put the jet wash in there, water might get in there and it could damage the fuel line. So all I've done here is get some duct tape, stuck it around the outside and sealed it up. It's just a precaution. I recommend doing it if you're doing one of these new style filler necks, because you don't want water or detergent or etc. getting into the fuel system via that. And once the fuel flap's done, I've also gone around the car and obviously blasted out the door shuts and also the rear hatch gate. I've done this in previous episodes, so I don't want to repeat the same process. It becomes a bit boring otherwise. So we'll concentrate on the alloy wheels next. And interestingly, on this vehicle, it had the front wheels refurbished, so all I had to do with that is just spray a bit of all-purpose cleaner in the arch liners, agitate that with a brush, and then literally just rinse them off. Another thing on this car that was of point of interest, it's just had 4 brand new tyres fitted to it as well. So whereas you may have to scrub the tyres with all-purpose cleaners 3 or 4 times to get that sort of brown goop out of them, I only had to do 1 pass on this purely because they say they're brand new. So with the wheel arches thoroughly flushed out, I'm going to use the Green Star all-purpose cleaner on the tyre, and I'm going to use one of these EZ brushes and just go around the lip of the inside of the rear wheel arch. Now they're actually fabric lined, so it's not like the fronts where you use this EZ brush quite thoroughly to scrub the plastic, but you can use one of these just to go on the inside of the lip just to sort of remove the mud that you might miss with the jet wash. And as we can see on the brush there, it's got out quite a bit of extra mud. And again, I just used a Chemical Guys brush on the tyre, and then again one of these work brush sort of semi-stiff bristle ones just to go around the actual face of the wheel and loosen off any dirt. They weren't that bad, to be honest. The next thing we're going to be using is quite a strong alkaline cleaner, wheel cleaner, and we're going to go around the backs of the barrel and remove as much of the brake dust and filth behind there that we can. Again, we're going to use one of the EZ brush range. It's the smaller one because this car only had 15-inch alloy wheels, so getting between the spokes was quite tight. You get larger ones and smaller ones. I'll give you a close-up here. It's just a case of getting in there and agitating it. I did leave the wheel cleaner, I think, for probably about 5 minutes, especially when they're really filthy. It just needs a little bit of time to break down that brake dust behind before you get in there in the brush and give it a good scrub. And sometimes, you have to go over 2 or 3 times, just depending on, how bad it is. What I'll do here is I'll just give you a little bit of a close-up between the spokes, and you can actually see it really, really in action, getting that sort of filth from behind and giving it a good old scrub and agitation. So for a wash process, I've just initially rinsed the car down, then put a coat of all-purpose cleaner over it, probably put some Built Hamber touchless snow foam over the top to give it a bit of a longer dwell time, rinsed all that off, and then for the contact wash, I've finally gone over with some shampoo through the snow foam lance, and I've used some, I think it's called Nanotech shampoo by Kosh Chemie. It smells really nice, it's the green stuff in the bucket, and just gone obviously and cleaned the car down with that before drying it and getting it into the workshop. So taking the interior out of this car had a number of purposes. Number one, we can see here, it's a 3-door, so obviously the seats flip forward, and that mechanism's broken on the driver's seat, so that will need to go off to the trimmer to be repaired. Secondly, it was disgusting inside, so taking the seats out was going to be a lot easier to clean it. And thirdly, One of the rear seats actually had a small cigarette burn, so again the trim would repair that, so it was well worth in this case removing them. Once we did do that, we can look at the boot as well, and this area is pretty gross. This is full of dust and stuff from the body shop where they've done obviously some paintwork and they don't really take much care. And once we remove the rear seat, we can see we've got years worth of just old parking tickets, straws, loads of bottle caps very randomly were in this car, electrical connections and things like that. Maybe it was owned or used by somebody, it was a Sparky or something, and obviously electrician. I don't know. There seem to be lots of like little electrical bits and bobs in the car. So once all the majority of large debris and junk's removed, we can get a vacuum cleaning there and start removing the rest of it. As you can see, just usually take the sort of crevice tool off just to sort of suck up the big stuff, put the crevice tool back on, then I'll usually agitate that with a small brush just to sort of remove most of the dust and sort of finer things we can around catches, etc. Now the carpets in this car were absolutely gross, and it was quite hard to tell initially whether the pile in the carpet had worn out and that's why it looked flat and sort of non-existent, or if it was just congealed with mud. And luckily for us it was the second one. So the drill brush can overfluff the carpet. In this actual instance it was quite good because it brought some sort of fluffiness back to the pile and started to break down the sort of mud and dirt in there. And likewise, this is a good illustration on camera that doesn't matter how much you scrub with the brush, sometimes you are not going to remove years worth of congealed coffee, stickers and general scuzz inside cup holders and sort of sunglass holding areas. So with that said, it's a good opportunity to segue into cleaning the plastics inside the car. So again, we're going to use one of these work stuff tough brushes, which is very quite good. And we're going to use some Kosh Chemie Green Star all-purpose cleaner again, somewhere between 15:1 to 10:1, depending on how much you need to scrub it. Pretty simple process. Give it a scrub with the brush. Use a microfiber cloth just to remove that residue and the filth. I rinse these out periodically in a nice bucket of clean water to keep them flushed out. And then I'm going to use the airline just to blow out any extra sort of things out of the corners that you just can't get with the brush. Added bonus is it also dries the plastic, so if you've missed an area or it needs a second pass because there's some really ingrained stuff in there, you get to see that straight away. Another area that's often overlooked is things like sun visors. They can get quite a lot of build-up of greasy handprints over them. And also here where the seatbelt comes out, that's like a plastic panel and it's quite grubby. So it's important to give this a really good scrub and clean up. And also just genuinely inspect the headlining and see if there's any marks on it. And onto these manky carpets. So we've sprayed some all-purpose cleaner on there, given it a good agitation with a drill brush. I've used some additional water from the machine, which is just fresh clean water, that we can get in there and start sucking all that year's worth of filth out of it. It's a little cutaway of the machine doing its work as well. As we can see on the right hand side, it's sucking all that filthy, disgusting water into its waste tank. And you know, it's not uncommon on sometimes with carpets like this or seats that you're going to go over them 3 or 4 times to get as much out as you can. It's not a one pass process, unfortunately. You just got to keep scrubbing and flushing it out until the water goes out the end of that nozzle and it looks pretty clean. What I'll do here is I'll give you a little bit of a cutaway of the wet vac. So the chamber on the right hand side is the wastewater. So you just lift up this plastic cover and that leaves like a little bucket there which we can pull up and tip the filthy water out. Simply place that back in again, put the cover on the top, and then the back tank is obviously either you can put fresh water in there or a soapy solution. As we can see, we just pour that in there and we're good to go onto the seats. And as we can see, the rear seats in this car are pretty disgusting. So we use the vac first to get rid of that body shop dust off the surface. Once that's done, we'll then give them a good soak in the all-purpose cleaner through the IK pump sprayer. Once that's done, we'll give it an agitation with a very soft drill brush attachment, and then get the wet vac on there and start extracting all those years worth of filth and stains and disgusting goop that's in the seats. And how much filth did we extract from this car? Quite a lot. So here comes a skank tank. That's the first bucket of water we got from the interior plastics. That'll be the second bucket of filth we got off the interior plastics. And then we're going to add in what we extracted from the carpet, which is just pure filth. And then for the finale, this is everything I extracted from the seats. I actually did them on a separate day purely because I pulled the interior, the seats out first, gave them a clean, they went off to the trimmer to be repaired. Then obviously once the seats came back I finished off the job, so that's why there's a slight bit of continuity disruption there. So I'm still trialling and using this Koshkemi interior dressing. I do like it. The only thing I'd question is its longevity. Is it as good as Aerospace 303? I don't know yet, we'll have to see. But ease of application, and finish is very good. Overall, the bodywork on this car wasn't that bad. I've just gone over it initially with some Koshkemi H9 and given it a bit of a cutback, and then gone over some Rupes Uno to seal it up. Customers supplied some brand new centre caps, so we fitted those. And it's a simple case of putting the tyre dressing on as well. And for me, the final thing is always cleaning the glass on the car. Now, this is one product that I've actually started to really like very, very quickly. So this is Kosh Chemi's own glass cleaner. I was using Autoglim, I think it's called Fast Glass or Rapid Glass, etc. It's the blue stuff. And it's a good product, but can be quite smeary, whereas the Kosh Chemi seems to finish down a lot easier. Something like this particular car had been smoked in extremely heavily, so I went over the inside of the windscreen a couple of times just to make sure I got all that nicotine and sort of years worth of filth off it. So overall, outside now, the car looks really nice and sharp and clean and shiny again. I think at the top of my head this was a 2015 or 16 and done around about 80,000. As we look at the before and after on the engine bay as well, that Motorplast dressing has done a really good job. It just looks really nice and natural underneath there, and when somebody comes to see it, it doesn't look sort of weathered and old. I think one of the biggest transformations is boot area. I mean, this was disgusting in here. It's just a nice place to go. The car did have a parcel shelf as well. I've just taken it out because it's obviously easier to film. The centre console section does look a lot better now as well. And the seats and the rest of it just looks really, really nice. It's just a pleasant place to sit now, so the next person who comes along is not sitting in years worth of disgusting filth. Carpets come out really well, and the customer even supplied a new set of mats for it as well. You'll be pleased to know next week's episode is already filmed. I've just got to edit it, and it's not a commercial and it's filthy. So it's going to be very good to watch, and if you haven't subscribed, please think about doing so.